Marcus Hawk Johnson expected a routine Saturday shift at Walmart. Work until 8:30. Clock out, grab milk. Instead, he found a mother and two children so hungry they were willing to steal. Her crime: buying formula for her starving baby. His response would mobilize 220 Hells Angels in the largest rescue operation Green Bay had seen in a decade. And it all started with 7 words a desperate woman whispered. Before we continue, put yourself in that Walmart. You're a security guard. You catch a mother stealing baby formula because her children are starving. Do you arrest her? Do you call social services? Do you buy the formula yourself? Subscribe, because every choice has consequences. And in the comments, what would you have done? Tell us honestly. Just let me feed my baby first. The fluorescent lights of Walmart Supercenter number 22847 hummed overhead, harsh and unforgiving against the February darkness outside. It was 8:17 p.m. on a Saturday night when the security alarm shrieked through the store entrance, that piercing electronic wail that made every shopper's head turn, every conversation stop, every cashier freeze mid-scan. Nicole Marie Harris stood 3 feet past the sensors, holding a reusable shopping bag in her left hand and an 8-month-old baby wrapped in 2 blankets in her right arm. She didn't run, didn't make excuses, didn't even try to hide what she'd done. She just stopped walking. Behind her legs, a 5-year-old boy with blue-tinged lips clutched the fabric of her thin purple jacket and whispered, "Mama?" in a voice that already understood something terrible was about to happen. The stolen items weren't hidden. 2 cans of En Famille formula, the largest size at $42 each, a package of Huggies diapers, a loaf of white bread, sliced cheese, total value $128.50. The tags still attached, screaming their presence to anyone who cared to look. Nicole's face was hollow, her cheeks sunken in a way that spoke of weeks without adequate food. Dark circles painted shadows under bloodshot brown eyes. Her light brown hair hung in a messy ponytail, unwashed, tangled, the kind of unkempt that comes not from laziness, but from having nowhere to shower. Her lips were cracked and bleeding from dehydration. The baby in her arms, Jaden, made weak crying sounds. Not the vigorous wail of a healthy infant, but something quieter, something wrong. Marcus Hawk Johnson saw all of this in the 3 seconds it took him to cross the 20 feet between the security office and the store entrance. Hawk was 6'1", 195 pounds of muscle earned from 20 years of discipline. 10 in the Army Rangers, 6 more working this Walmart security job that paid $17.50 an hour. His clean-shaven head caught the fluorescent light. His dark skin and the scar running down his left forearm from an IED injury in Afghanistan gave him an intimidating presence that usually made shoplifters bolt the moment they saw him approaching. Nicole didn't bolt. She turned to face him with the resigned expression of someone who'd run out of options 3 weeks ago. "Ma'am," Hawk said, his voice gentle despite his size, hands visible and non-threatening. "I need you to stop right there." "I know." Nicole's voice broke on those 2 words. "I'm sorry." Around them, approximately 15 other customers had stopped to watch. The Saturday night crowd before the storm, people stocking up because the forecast showed temperatures dropping to -25 Celsius by midnight, with a wind chill that the Weather Service was calling life-threatening. "Ma'am, you took items without paying," Hawk continued, keeping his tone calm. He'd worked this job for 6 years. He'd seen hundreds of shoplifters. Usually they argued, or lied, or got aggressive. I need you to come with me to the office. Nicole nodded, tears streaming down her hollow face. Okay, I will. I'll go with you. She looked down at the baby in her arms. Jaden's crying had weakened to a whimper, his small face scrunched up, rooting for a bottle that wasn't there. The blankets wrapped around him were worn thin, and despite 2 layers plus Nicole's own sweater underneath, the baby felt cold to the touch. Just... Nicole's voice cracked completely. Please. And then she said it. The 7 words that would change everything. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I haven't eaten in 4 days, but my baby needs formula. Please, just... let me feed him first before you call police. Please. He hasn't eaten since this morning. Just let me feed him. Then you can arrest me. I don't care what happens to me. Just let me feed my baby first. The little boy at her leg, Marcus, 5 years old, wearing a coat too thin for Wisconsin winter, looked up at Hawk with eyes that had seen too much for his age. Please don't take my mama, Marcus whispered, his voice tiny and terrified. We'll be good. I promise we'll be good. Hawk felt something shift in his chest. He'd served 3 tours overseas. He'd seen refugees in Kandahar, mothers with that same desperate expression, children with that same hollow-eyed starvation. He knew what desperation looked like when it wore a human face. He looked at the items in Nicole's bag. Not electronics, not jewelry, not alcohol or cigarettes or anything that could be sold for cash. Formula, diapers, bread, cheese, survival items. His radio crackled on his hip. Hawk, you got the situation at entrance 3? Hawk pressed the button. Control, this is Hawk. I'm taking my 30-minute break. I'll be at register 12. He turned back to Nicole, whose confusion was visible through her tears. Hawk knelt down, 6'1", reducing himself to 3 feet, getting to little Marcus's eye level. Hey, buddy, Hawk said softly. I'm not taking your mama anywhere. You're okay. Everything's okay. Marcus's blue-tinged lips trembled. You're not gonna arrest her? No, I'm gonna help. Hawk stood, looking at Nicole directly. Ma'am, you're not going to jail. Not tonight. Not ever for this. Nicole stared at him like she'd misheard. But I stole... You didn't steal, Hawk interrupted gently. You were shopping and forgot to pay. Happens all the time, right? Nicole's knees buckled slightly. She didn't understand what was happening. Here's what we're gonna do, Hawk continued, his voice carrying the command authority of a man who'd led soldiers through combat zones. I'm gonna buy these items for you, and then we're gonna get you somewhere warm, and then we're gonna fix whatever made you think this was your only option. I can't... Nicole's voice broke completely. I can't let you pay. I can't... Yes, you can. And you will. Hawk's tone was firm but kind. Because I got friends, and we don't let mothers freeze in parking lots with babies. Not in this town. Not on my watch. What Nicole didn't know, what she couldn't have known in that moment, was that the call Hawk was about to make would bring 220 Hell's Angels roaring into Green Bay by noon the next day. What she didn't know was that the man who'd put her in this situation, landlord Raymond Tucker, was about to have the worst week of his life. But that part came later. First, there was the immediate crisis of 3 people who were approximately 8 hours away from hypothermia becoming fatal. Hawk gestured toward Register 12. Come on, let's check out. Then I'm making a phone call. Nicole followed him on legs that barely held her weight. Little Marcus still clinging to her purple jacket. Baby Jaden whimpering weakly in her arms. Other customers stared as they passed. Some with pity. Some with judgment. None of them helped. At the register, Hawk pulled out his worn leather wallet. The cashier, Linda, who'd worked the evening shift for 3 years and had seen Hawk do this before, though never for $128, didn't ask questions. She scanned the items quietly, her face carefully neutral. Hawk swiped his debit card. The transaction went through. He handed the bag to Nicole. "Okay," Hawk said. "Now let's get baby fed. Follow me to the break room. It's private, warm, you can sit down." The break room was small. 1 table, 4 chairs, a microwave, a vending machine, and a water cooler. Hawk helped Nicole prepare the formula bottle because her hands were shaking too badly to hold it steady. When she finally got Jaden latched onto the bottle, the baby drank hungrily, desperately, making small sounds that broke Hawk's heart. Little Marcus sat in one of the chairs, tearing into the bread and cheese with the ferociousness of someone who hadn't eaten solid food in 2 days. While Jaden ate, Hawk sat across from Nicole. "Now," he said quietly, "tell me everything. And I mean everything. Where are you living?" Nicole's voice came out flat, defeated. "My car, behind the store." "How long?" 3 weeks. "Why?" And then the dam broke. Nicole told him about Marcus Sr., her boyfriend, father of both children, killed 7 months ago in a construction accident. Told him about the job she'd had as a dental hygienist, $42,000 a year. Stable. Decent. Told him about the apartment that cost $875 a month. Affordable. Safe. The first place she'd felt secure in years. Then she told him about Raymond Tucker. 3 weeks ago, Nicole said, her voice hollow, my landlord served me an eviction notice. Said I was 3 months behind on rent. But I wasn't. I had receipts. I paid every month. Cash, because that's how he wanted it. But when I showed him the receipts, he said they didn't count because I didn't have his signature on them. She described the sheriff arriving 3 days later. Deputy Collins, executing the court order. How she'd shown him the photos of her receipts on her phone, begged him to see this was illegal. How he'd said, "Ma'am, I just execute the court order. You need to dispute this with a lawyer." How her belongings had been removed to the curb in the middle of January in Wisconsin. I lost my job immediately, Nicole continued. No address for direct deposit. I missed 3 days trying to sort out housing. They let me go. And the bank? They froze my account during the landlord dispute. I have $4,200 in there. I can't touch it. They said it'll take 6 to 8 weeks to resolve. She told him about trying the shelter, St. Vincent's house, full waitlist position 29. About calling Legal Aid Wisconsin, giving them the Walmart customer service desk number because her phone service had expired, how they never called back. About applying for emergency assistance from Brown County Social Services, being denied for insufficient documentation. She told him about running into her former co-worker Linda right here in this Walmart yesterday. How Linda had said, "I wish I could help, but I'm really tight on money right now," while her shopping cart held $200 in groceries. And then Nicole told him about the phone call to her mother 2 days ago. I begged her, Nicole whispered, staring at the table. I told her we were living in the car, that it was getting colder, that the kids needed help, and she said, Nicole's voice broke. She said, "Nicole, you made your choices. Having 2 kids with a man who couldn't provide for you, that was your choice. I can't enable your poor decisions. You need to figure this out on your own like an adult." Nicole looked up at Hawk, tears streaming. Marcus Sr. did provide. He had a steady job. He paid rent. He loved his kids. He died in an accident. It wasn't his fault. And my mother, she has a 3-bedroom house. She lives alone. She'd rather her grandchildren freeze than enable me. Hawk listened to all of it, didn't interrupt, didn't judge. When Nicole finished, he pulled out his phone. "Okay," Hawk said, his voice carrying absolute certainty. "Here's what happens now. I'm calling my brothers. You're getting a hotel room tonight. Warm, safe, real beds. Tomorrow we're calling a lawyer. And your landlord, Raymond Tucker? He's about to have a very bad week." Nicole stared at him. "I don't understand. Why are you helping me?" Hawk met her eyes. "Because someone helped me once. When I came back from Afghanistan, I had PTSD bad. Couldn't keep a job. The VA system was failing me. I was homeless for 3 months, sleeping behind a gas station. A biker found me, got me into housing, connected me to services, saved my life. Now I pay it forward." He dialed a number, put the phone on speaker. 1 ring. 2. "Hawk?" The voice that answered was deep, gravelly, carrying the weight of authority. "What's up, brother?" "Tiny," Hawk said. "It's an emergency. I got a mom with 2 babies. She's been living in her car for 3 weeks in this cold. Landlord fraud case. She needs help. How fast can you get church together?" Raymond Tiny Walsh, president of the Green Bay Hells Angels chapter, 6'4", 280 pounds, a man whose road name was deeply ironic, didn't hesitate for even a second. "Give me the address. We'll be there in 20 minutes. How many brothers you want?" "All of them," Hawk said. "This one's bad, Tiny. 8-month-old baby, 5-year-old kid, mom hasn't eaten in 4 days. And I got a feeling there's more victims. The landlord's name is Raymond Tucker, owns multiple properties." There was a pause on the other end. Then Tiny's voice came back, harder now. "Say no more. We ride. And Hawk, tell that mama she's safe now. Nobody freezes on our watch." Hawk looked at Nicole across the break room table. "You hear that?" he said. "You're safe. Your babies are safe. You're getting a hotel room tonight. I don't care what it costs. Tomorrow we're getting you a lawyer, and we're getting your money unfrozen. And that landlord who did this, Raymond Tucker, he's about to meet 220 very angry bikers who protect families." Hawk reached across the table, offering his hand. Nicole took it, her small hand disappearing in his larger one. "My name is Marcus," Hawk said, "but everyone calls me Hawk. You're not alone anymore. You got an army now." Nicole sobbed, the kind of crying that comes from relief after weeks of terror. "Thank you. God, thank you." Hawk squeezed her hand gently. "Don't thank me yet. Wait till you see what we do to slumlords." Outside Walmart, the temperature continued its relentless drop. -20 Celsius and falling. Wind howling across the parking lot, picking up snow and hurling it against car windows. The weather forecast scrolling across phones and car radios. Life-threatening cold expected overnight. Travel not recommended after 10 p.m. Temperatures dropping to -25 by midnight. Nicole's 2004 Honda Civic sat in the back corner of the lot. Engine cold, heater broken from a radiator leak she couldn't afford to fix. Inside that car were the remnants of a life that had collapsed in 72 hours. A garbage bag of clothes, Marcus's stuffed dinosaur, 3 empty formula cans, 2 remaining diapers. If Hawk hadn't been working that night. If he'd already clocked out. If Nicole had waited even one more day, the medical assessment would later show at least one of them, probably Jaden, wouldn't have survived. But Hawk had been there. And in exactly 18 minutes, the rumble of motorcycles would start in the distance, growing louder, closer, until the entire parking lot shook with the arrival of something Nicole had never expected. An army wearing leather vests and Hell's Angels patches, coming not to judge, not to lecture, but to protect. 23 minutes after Hawk's phone call, the first Harley-Davidson pulled into the Walmart parking lot. Then another. Then 5 more. Then a wave of them, chrome gleaming under the lot's sodium lights, engines roaring in a coordinated thunder that set off 3 car alarms and made every shopper inside the store turn toward the windows. By 9:15 p.m., 52 motorcycles lined the asphalt in careful formation. Tiny Walsh dismounted first. 6'4", 280 pounds of solid muscle, wrapped in a leather vest that bore 23 years of patches and road stories. His beard was gray, his eyes sharp, and when he walked, it was with the confidence of a man who'd commanded respect in every room he'd entered since he was 16 years old. Behind him came the rest of the Green Bay chapter. Men and women ranging from 25 to 68 years old. Veterans, electricians, nurses, teachers, mechanics. People with day jobs and families and mortgages, united by the brotherhood of the patch and the philosophy that when someone needs help, you don't ask questions, you just show up. Hawk met them at the entrance, Nicole standing behind him with both children, her expression oscillating between confusion and terror. 220 bikers had seemed like salvation on the phone. In person, they looked like an invading force. But then Tiny knelt. 6'4", reducing himself to 5-year-old Marcus's eye level, the same move Hawk had made an hour earlier. "Hey, buddy," Tiny said, his gravelly voice softening to something almost musical. "My name's Tiny. What's yours?" Little Marcus, hiding behind his mother's leg, whispered, "Marcus." "That's a strong name," Tiny said. "You know what we're here for, Marcus?" The boy shook his head. "We're here to help your mama, and you, and your baby brother. Because that's what we do. We protect families. And you're family now, okay?" Marcus nodded slowly. Tiny stood, looked at Nicole. "Ma'am, my name is Raymond Walsh. Everyone calls me Tiny. I know how this looks. 50 bikers showing up probably isn't what you expected. But I promise you, we're here to help. Hawk told me your situation. We're getting you and your boys into a warm hotel tonight. Tomorrow we start fixing the rest." From the crowd of bikers, a woman stepped forward. Angela Martinez, 43 years old, nurse practitioner specializing in pediatrics. She wore a leather vest with an old ladies chapter patch, her dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. "Ma'am," Angela said gently, "my name is Doc. I'm a pediatric nurse. I'd like to check you and your children, just to make sure everyone's okay. Is that all right?" Nicole nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. Doc pulled out a small medical kit from her motorcycle saddlebag, always prepared, and began a quick assessment. Blood pressure cuff on Nicole, stethoscope listening to Jaden's heart, thermometer checking little Marcus's temperature. "Okay," Doc said after 5 minutes, her professional voice carrying concern. "Mom, you're showing signs of severe dehydration and malnutrition. Your blood pressure is low. Baby's temperature is slightly below normal. Not critical yet, but we need to get him warmed up properly. The 5-year-old has early-stage frostbite on his fingertips and possible respiratory infection from the cold. Everyone needs immediate warming, hydration, and food." She looked at Tiny. "Hospital?" Tiny shook his head. "Hotel first. Get them stable, warm, fed. Doc, you stay with them tonight. If anything deteriorates, then hospital. But let's not traumatize them more unless we have to." From the crowd, a younger man stepped forward. Kevin Chen, 29, software engineer who worked remotely for Microsoft. His road name was Byte, and he wore glasses under his helmet. He looked more like someone you'd find debugging code than riding a Harley, but his vest bore 5 years of brotherhood patches. "Tiny," Byte said, holding up his phone. "I'm already running searches on Raymond Tucker. Public records show 6 rental properties in the Green Bay area. Multiple complaints filed with the City Housing Authority over the past 3 years. 14 documented incidents of tenant disputes. 8 evictions in the last 18 months. That's an unusually high rate." Tiny's jaw tightened. "Dig deeper. I want everything. Bank records if you can get them, court filings, tenant testimonies. If this is a pattern, we're going to expose it." Another man emerged from the formation. Thomas Bryant, 55, 6 feet tall, with silver hair and sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He wore a suit under his leather vest, unusual among the group, and carried a briefcase that looked wildly out of place in a Walmart parking lot at 9 p.m. His road name was Judge, and it wasn't ironic. "I'm an attorney," Judge said, stepping directly to Nicole. "Criminal defense and tenant law. 25 years practicing. Ma'am, what happened to you is illegal. Wisconsin statute 799.40 requires landlords to provide written notice with specific grounds for eviction and give you time to respond. From what Hawk told us, your landlord violated multiple tenant protection laws. I'm taking your case pro bono. Tomorrow morning, I'm filing an emergency injunction to freeze any further action by Raymond Tucker and to release your bank funds. Is that acceptable to you?" Nicole, still holding sleeping Jaden, nodded through tears. "Yes. Thank you." Judge pulled out a business card, handed it to her. "My cell number is on there. Call me anytime, day or night. You have legal representation now." Tiny looked around at his assembled brothers and sisters, 52 from Green Bay, more on the way from neighboring chapters. "All right, listen up. Here's the plan. Doc, you take the family to Motel 6 on Military Avenue. I already called, got them a room, paid for a week. Brothers, I want 4 volunteers for overnight protection. Rotate shifts every 4 hours. Nobody bothers this family tonight." 4 hands went up immediately. "Byte, you're on research. Everything on Raymond Tucker. Financial records, property records, tenant histories. I want a complete picture by dawn." "On it," Byte confirmed. "Judge, start filing paperwork first thing tomorrow. We need that bank account unfrozen, and we need a restraining order against Tucker if possible." Judge nodded. "The rest of you," Tiny continued, "spread the word. Call Appleton chapter, Milwaukee chapter, Oshkosh, Madison. Tell them we got a slumlord situation and we're going hunting for evidence. I want every tenant Raymond Tucker has ever evicted interviewed. I want every complaint documented. If this guy's been running a fraud scheme, we're about to end it." The assembled bikers responded with a unified, "Yes, sir." Tiny turned back to Nicole. His expression softened. "Ma'am, I know this is overwhelming. 50 bikers, lawyers, nurses, all this commotion. But here's what I need you to understand. You're not alone anymore. You tried the system. The system failed you. So now you got us. And we don't fail." He looked down at little Marcus, still clutching his mother's leg. "You ever been on a motorcycle, buddy?" Marcus shook his head. "Well, when this is all over and it's warm again, we're going to take you and your mama for a ride. How's that sound?" For the first time in 3 weeks, little Marcus smiled. As Doc loaded Nicole and the children into her pickup truck, safer than motorcycles for transporting a baby and a 5-year-old in winter, Hawk pulled Tiny aside. "There's something else," Hawk said quietly. "When Nicole was telling me about the eviction, She mentioned the sheriff who executed it. Deputy Collins. She showed him receipts proving she'd paid rent. He saw her kids, saw it was January, saw this was wrong, and he just followed orders anyway. Tiny's expression darkened. System failure number 1. Keep going. She applied for emergency assistance at Brown County Social Services. Caseworker named James Morton told her to come back with documentation she can't get because she's homeless. Catch-22. System failure number 2. Got it. She ran into a former co-worker yesterday. Woman named Linda, used to work with Nicole at the dental office. Linda saw her situation, saw the kids, said she was too tight on money to help. Her cart had $200 in groceries. System failure number 3. Not official, but moral. The worst kind, Tiny said. And her own mother, Hawk finished, his voice carrying disgust. Barbara Harris, 3-bedroom house, lives alone, comfortable retirement. Told Nicole she made poor choices and needs to figure it out like an adult. Her grandchildren were living in a car in February, and she chose pride over helping them. System failure number 4. Tiny was quiet for a long moment, watching Doc's truck pull out of the parking lot with Nicole and the boys inside. All right, he finally said. Tomorrow we start building the case. But tonight, that family sleeps safe and warm. That's the win for today. He looked at Hawk. You did good, brother. Real good. Could have just called the cops, let them arrest her, let CPS take the kids. Instead, you called us. Hawk shrugged. It's what brotherhood means. Someone's in trouble, you help. No questions. Tiny clapped him on the shoulder. Get home, get sleep. Tomorrow's gonna be a long day. We got a landlord to expose. As the bikers dispersed, some heading home, 4 staying for first watch at the motel, others already on phones calling neighboring chapters, the temperature dropped to -22 Celsius. Inside Motel 6, room 127, Nicole Harris sat on a real bed for the first time in 3 weeks. The heater hummed, pumping warm air that felt like heaven. Jaden slept in the portable crib Doc had somehow procured, his breathing steady and normal now that he was warm and fed. Little Marcus was already asleep on the second bed, actually snoring, his blue-tinged lips returning to healthy pink. Doc handed Nicole a hot cup of soup from the vending machine. Cheap, but warm and salty. Drink this slowly, Doc instructed gently. Your body isn't used to food right now. Small sips will get you real food tomorrow. Nicole sipped, and the warmth spreading through her chest felt like salvation. Why? Nicole whispered. Why are you all helping me? You don't even know me. Doc smiled. Because someone has to, and because we can. It's really that simple. Outside, 4 Hells Angels bikers sat in the parking lot in 2 vehicles, heaters running, watching the door to room 127. Tank, Reaper, Diesel, and Snake, veterans all, taking 4-hour shifts, making sure nothing disturbed the family sleeping inside. This was what brotherhood looked like. Not violence, not chaos, just quiet protection while a desperate mother and her children finally felt safe enough to close their eyes. And tomorrow, when the sun came up, the real work would begin. Because Raymond Tucker, landlord, fraud, thief, had no idea what was about to hit him. Sunday morning arrived cold and clear. The storm had passed overnight, leaving Green Bay buried under 15 centimeters of fresh snow. The temperature at dawn, -23 Celsius. The kind of cold that burns exposed skin in minutes. By 9:47 a.m., the parking lot of Tucker Properties LLC at 847 Main Street downtown looked like a military staging ground. The rumble started low and distant, like thunder rolling across the frozen landscape. Then it built, a deep, mechanical roar that rattled windows 3 blocks away and set off car alarms in a cascading wave of sound. 220 motorcycles rolled into downtown Green Bay in perfect formation. Not a protest fueled by anger, a peaceful stand, but the sheer presence, the coordinated efficiency of men and women who'd ridden together for years, the synchronized movements, the disciplined rows of chrome and leather, made it impossible to ignore. They parked in formation across 3 overflow lots. Engines died almost in unison. The sudden silence after all that noise felt heavy and expectant. Then 220 bikers dismounted and simply stood there. Not shouting, not brandishing weapons, not making threats, just present. Now, you might be thinking, 200 Hell's Angels show up at a landlord's office and chaos erupts. Fists flying, property damage, the kind of vigilante justice that makes good TV but ruins lives. That's not the story you expected, is it? But that's not what happened. What happened instead was something Raymond Tucker would later tell his lawyer was worse than any beating. Because you can heal from a beating. You can't heal from having every lie you've ever told systematically dismantled by people who know exactly how to work within the system they'd learned to navigate through years of being on the outside of it. Tiny Walsh stood at the front of the formation, clipboard in hand. Yes, a clipboard, borrowed from Judge's briefcase, and addressed his assembled brothers and sisters. All right, listen up. We do this clean. We do this legal. Nobody touches Tucker. Nobody threatens Tucker. We are collecting evidence, interviewing witnesses, and building a case that will put this man in prison. Everyone understand? 220 voices responded. Yes, sir. Bite, you got the tenant list? Kevin Chen, Bite, held up his phone. 41 former tenants over the past 3 years across 6 properties. I've got addresses for 33 of them. The other 8 moved out of state. Judge, you got the documentation ready? Thomas Bryant, judge, held up a briefcase. Emergency injunction filed at 8 a.m. this morning. Judge Hartman granted it at 8:47 a.m. Nicole Harris's bank account is unfrozen as of right now. I also filed a restraining order preventing Raymond Tucker from contacting her or disposing of any business records. The order was served electronically to his attorney 15 minutes ago. Doc, how's the family? Angela Martinez, Doc, spoke from her position in the formation. All 3 patients stable. Baby Jaden's temperature normalized overnight. Marcus is on antibiotics for respiratory infection. Nicole is severely malnourished but responding to gradual refeeding. They're safe at the motel with 4 brothers on watch. Good. Tiny looked at the assembled group. Now we split up. Team 1, door to door to every current and former tenant. I want statements. I want receipts. I want proof of payment if they have it. Team 2, City Records Office. Pull every complaint filed against Tucker Properties. Team 3, with me to Tucker's office. We're requesting a formal meeting to discuss tenant concerns. He doesn't know we have Nicole, doesn't know we have a lawyer, doesn't know what's coming. The teams dispersed with military precision. Margaret Chen lived at 1847 Oak Street in a studio apartment that cost $900 a month. Too much for 400 square feet, but it was all she could afford after Raymond Tucker evicted her from her previous apartment 8 months ago. When Tank and Reaper knocked on her door at 10:15 a.m., she opened it with the chain still attached, eyes wary. "Ma'am," Tank said, 6'2", 54 years old, ex-Marine with a gray beard and gentle eyes. "We're not here to cause trouble. We're investigating Raymond Tucker's rental practices. We understand you were evicted from one of his properties last May. Would you be willing to talk to us? Margaret's wariness melted into something else. Anger. Relief. The expression of someone who'd been waiting for somebody, anybody, to finally ask the right questions. She opened the door. Inside her small apartment, Margaret sat at her kitchen table, hands wrapped around a coffee cup, and told her story. I lived in one of Tucker's apartments on Riverside Drive for 14 months, she began, her voice quiet but steady. $850 a month. I paid every month, cash, like he required. I kept my own records, dates, amounts, everything, but I didn't ask for receipts because I didn't think I needed to. I trusted him. She paused, staring at her coffee. Last April, I got an eviction notice. Said I was 2 months behind. But I wasn't. I'd paid March and April both, cash, directly to him. When I showed him my records, he said they were not official documentation. He had his own records showing I'd never paid. It was his word against mine. And he owns the properties, so. What did you do? Reaper asked. 47 years old. Former police officer who'd left the force after reporting corruption and being punished for it. I called legal aid, Margaret said. They took my information, said they'd call back. They never did. I went to the tenant rights office at City Hall. They gave me pamphlets. I showed up to the eviction hearing without a lawyer because I couldn't afford one. The judge looked at Tucker's records, looked at mine, believed him. I had 30 days to vacate. She looked up at Tank and Reaper, her eyes glistening. I lost my security deposit, $850. I lost last month's rent, another $850. He kept both, said they were applied to unpaid rent. I tried to fight it, but I had to move, had to find a new place fast. I gave up. And I've been living with the guilt ever since because I knew something was wrong, but I didn't have proof. And I didn't have money for a lawyer, and I just gave up. Tank pulled out a small recording device. Ma'am, with your permission, would you be willing to repeat that testimony on record? We're building a case. Margaret's hands shook as she reached for the recorder. Yes, she said firmly. Yes. If it means that man faces consequences, I'll testify. I should have fought harder. Maybe if I had, what happened to you wouldn't have happened to others. Tank stopped her gently. Ma'am, this isn't your fault. You tried. The system failed you. That's not on you. That's on the system. Margaret's testimony took 17 minutes to record. When they left her apartment, Tank and Reaper had the first documented pattern of Raymond Tucker's fraud scheme. They wouldn't be the last. By noon, Team 1 had interviewed 9 former tenants. Every single story followed the same pattern. Tenant pays rent in cash or money order as required by Tucker. Tucker doesn't provide receipt unless specifically requested, and most don't think to ask. After several months, Tucker claims tenant is behind on rent. Tenant shows personal records, photos, money order stubs, anything they kept. Tucker produces official records, showing no payment received. Eviction filed quickly, before tenant can gather legal help. Sheriff executes eviction order. Tucker keeps security deposit and last month's rent, totaling $1,500 to $2,000 per eviction. New tenant moves in within days. At 12:34 p.m., Byte made a discovery that changed everything. He'd been working from his laptop in a coffee shop, running deep searches on Raymond Tucker's financial records. Not entirely legal searches, but Byte had skills and knew how to cover his tracks. He called Tiny. Boss, you need to hear this. Go ahead. I found Tucker's personal email account, managed to access it through a password recovery vulnerability. There's an email thread from January 2023 with his attorney. Subject line, previous tenant settlement. Keep going. 3 years ago, Tucker rented an apartment to a woman named Patricia Simmons. Single mother, 2 kids, same demographic as Nicole. The email references an insurance policy Tucker had taken out on the property, but the wording is weird. It mentions Patricia's death and a payout of $180,000. Tiny's voice went cold. Say that again. Patricia Simmons died in Tucker's rental property in February 2023. The official cause of death was listed as complications from pneumonia. But the insurance policy Tucker had on her, it wasn't property insurance, it was a life insurance policy, with Tucker as the beneficiary, and it had been taken out exactly 2 months before she died. The line was silent for 5 full seconds. Are you telling me, Tiny said slowly, that Raymond Tucker took out life insurance on a tenant and she died 2 months later? That's what the emails suggest. And boss? I pulled her eviction records. Tucker had filed eviction paperwork on Patricia 3 weeks before she died. Same pattern as Nicole. Claimed she was behind on rent, had records showing non-payment. She claimed she'd paid. The eviction was pending when she died. After her death, the eviction was withdrawn, and Tucker collected $180,000. Where are the kids now? Foster system. Both of them. Father wasn't in the picture. Tiny's jaw clenched so hard his teeth hurt. Send everything to Judge. Now. We're not just dealing with fraud anymore. We might be dealing with murder. At 1:15 p.m., Tiny, Judge, Hawk, and 4 other senior chapter members walked into the office of Tucker Properties, LLC. The receptionist, a young woman named Ashley, who looked terrified by the sight of 6 bikers in leather vests, stammered, "Can I help you?" "We're here to see Raymond Tucker," Tiny said, his voice polite but firm. "We have concerns about tenant practices we'd like to discuss." He's not available right now." Judge stepped forward, pulling papers from his briefcase. "That's unfortunate, because I'm an attorney, and I have a restraining order here that requires Mr. Tucker to preserve all business records and cease any contact with a client of mine. I need to serve this personally." Ashley picked up the phone with shaking hands. "Mr. Tucker, there are people here to see you." A moment later, the door to the back office opened. Raymond Tucker emerged. 52 years old. 5'10", 185 pounds, balding with gray hair at the sides. Trimmed beard. He wore khakis and a polo shirt with his company logo. He looked like a respectable businessman. He looked like someone's uncle. He looked utterly, completely ordinary. And that was the most disturbing thing about him, because evil doesn't wear a mask. It doesn't announce itself. It looks like the guy who volunteers at Habitat for Humanity on Saturdays and coaches Little League on Sundays and destroys families on Monday through Friday. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" Tucker's voice was smooth, practiced, condescending in the way of men who believe they're untouchable. Judge stepped forward. "Mr. Tucker, my name is Thomas Bryant, attorney at law. I represent Nicole Harris. I'm here to serve you with a restraining order and to notify you that we're filing a civil lawsuit for fraud, illegal eviction, and theft." Tucker's face remained carefully neutral, but something flickered in his eyes. "I'm afraid you're misinformed. Ms. Harris was legally evicted for non-payment of rent. I have documentation we believe to be fraudulent," Judge interrupted calmly. "We also have testimony from 9 other former tenants describing identical circumstances. We've filed complaints with the Wisconsin Department of Agriculture, Trade and Consumer Protection, the Fair Housing Council, and the State Bar's Real Estate Section. Additionally, we've requested the Brown County District Attorney's Office open a criminal investigation into potential fraud and racketeering." The color drained from Tucker's face. "Furthermore," Judge continued, pulling another document from his briefcase, "we've discovered evidence of a previous tenant, Patricia Simmons, who died under suspicious circumstances in February 2023 while facing eviction from you. A tenant on whom you held a life insurance policy that paid out $180,000. The DA is very interested in that." Tucker's mouth opened, closed, opened again. That was a legitimate policy. Pneumonia is not suspicious. The medical examiner is reopening the case," Judge said flatly, "along with 3 detectives from the Major Crimes Unit. They'll want to speak with you." Tiny stepped forward now, 6'4" of controlled fury. "Here's what's going to happen, Raymond," Tiny said, his voice deadly quiet. "You're going to unlock every filing cabinet in this office. You're going to provide every document we request. You're going to cooperate fully with law enforcement, because if you don't, if you try to destroy evidence, if you try to run, there are 220 of us, and we will find you. We will make sure every news station, every newspaper, every social media platform knows exactly what you've done. We will stand outside your house, your office, your church. Everywhere you go, we'll be there, peaceful and legal, holding signs with the names of every family you've destroyed. Do you understand me?" Tucker's hands shook. "You can't threaten me." "I'm not threatening you," Tiny said. "I'm promising you. We protect families. You destroy them. And we're really, really good at our job." The room went absolutely silent. Tucker looked at the 6 bikers standing in his office, looked at the attorney with a briefcase full of documentation, looked at Ashley, his receptionist, who was staring at him with dawning horror. "I want my lawyer," Tucker said. "Smart choice," Judge replied. "You're going to need one." At 4:47 p.m., Raymond Tucker was arrested at his home on Pinehurst Drive. He was in his garage when the police arrived, working on his truck, the 2023 GMC Sierra he'd purchased for $58,000 last January, the same month he'd evicted 3 families. He had grease on his hands. He was humming. He looked up, confused, when 3 Brown County Sheriff's vehicles pulled into his driveway, lights flashing. "Raymond Tucker?" Detective Sarah Voss approached with her hand on her service weapon, not drawn, but ready. "Yes? You're under arrest for fraud, theft by deception, and filing false documents. We also have a warrant to search this residence for business records related to Tucker Properties, LLC." "This is ridiculous," Tucker sputtered, but his face had gone pale. "I haven't done anything." "You have the right to remain silent," Detective Voss began, and Tucker's world collapsed in the span of 30 seconds it took to read him his Miranda rights. His face scraped against the cold concrete of his driveway as they cuffed him. His expensive truck sat there, half-serviced. His house, 3 bedrooms, newly renovated deck, hot tub in back, sat pristine and perfect, built on the stolen security deposits of 23 families. As they loaded Tucker into the police car, Tiny Walsh stood at the edge of the property with Judge, Bite, Hawk, and Doc, watching. "Is it over?" Hawk asked quietly. "Not yet," Tiny replied, "but it started." The search of Tucker's home took 6 hours. In the safe, hidden in his home office, Tucker had thought it was clever, tucked behind a fake electrical panel. Investigators found 2 sets of books. The real ledger showed every payment received from every tenant. Dates, amounts, cash deposits meticulously recorded. The fake ledger, the one Tucker used for eviction proceedings, showed selective non-payment. Strategic gaps designed to justify evictions. They also found a folder marked Insurance, PT, containing the full policy documentation for Patricia Simmons. Life insurance, $200,000 payout, with Raymond Tucker listed as beneficiary. The policy had been taken out on January 15, 2023. Patricia had died March 8, 2023, less than 2 months later. In Tucker's email account, which Byte's anonymous tip had directed investigators toward, they found text messages to his girlfriend, Cheryl. One sent January 11, 2025, 1 week before Nicole's eviction. Tucker. Got another one lined up. Single mom, 2 kids, always pays cash. She'll be easy. Cheryl. Doesn't it bother you? The kids? Tucker. It's business. Besides, these people are stupid. Who pays rent without getting a receipt? That's on them. Cheryl. But where will they go? Tucker. Not my problem. I'm not a social worker. Already got new tenant ready to move in. $7K profit easy. That text message alone was enough to demonstrate intent. Combined with the 2 sets of books, the 9 witness testimonies, the pattern of evictions, and the reopened investigation into Patricia Simmons's death, the case against Raymond Tucker was devastating. At 11:23 p.m. on Sunday night, barely 27 hours after Hawk had bought formula for Nicole in a Walmart, the Brown County District Attorney's Office announced charges. 23 counts of fraud, 1 for each illegal eviction. 23 counts of theft by deception, security deposits. 14 counts of filing false documents with the court. 1 count of suspicion of negligent homicide in the death of Patricia Simmons, pending medical examiner review. Bail was set at $100,000. Raymond Tucker, who'd stolen an estimated $87,000 over 3 years and spent it on trucks and boats and vacations, didn't have it. He sat in Brown County Jail that night, in an orange jumpsuit, no longer looking like a respectable businessman, just looking like what he was, a predator who'd preyed on the vulnerable. Finally caught. Monday morning, Nicole Harris woke up in a warm bed for the 2nd day in a row. For a moment, that brief, disoriented moment between sleep and consciousness, she forgot where she was. Then the memories flooded back. The Walmart, the security guard, the phone call, the motorcycles, the hotel room. She sat up quickly, panicked, looking for her children. Jaden slept peacefully in the portable crib, wrapped in his worn blue blanket, the one with his name embroidered in yellow thread, the one Marcus Sr. had given him the day he was born, the blanket that had kept him warm in the freezing car, the blanket that Nicole had clutched like a lifeline through 3 weeks of terror. Little Marcus was curled up in the 2nd bed, his breathing deep and steady, his lips the healthy pink they were supposed to be, instead of the frightening blue-tinged color of hypothermia. A soft knock on the door made Nicole flinch. "It's Doc," came Angela's voice from outside. "Just checking on everyone." Nicole opened the door. Doc stood there with a bag of groceries and a smile. "Morning," Doc said gently. "Brought breakfast. Real food, eggs, toast, orange juice. We're going to get your strength back slowly, okay? Small meals, frequent. Your body needs to readjust." Over scrambled eggs that tasted like heaven, Doc explained what would happen next. "Judge got your bank account unfrozen yesterday," Doc said. "All $4,200 is accessible again as of this morning. Tiny's friend owns an electrical contracting company. He's offering you a job as office administrator. $38,000 a year, starts next week if you want it. And we found an apartment." Nicole's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. An apartment? 2-bedroom Park Ridge complex on Webster Avenue. $900 a month, which is in your budget. Landlord is a friend of the club. He ran full background on Raymond Tucker for us. Wants to make sure you're protected. First month's rent is covered by the club's emergency fund. You just need security deposit and last month, which you have money for now. Nicole started crying. Not the desperate, hopeless crying of 3 weeks ago. Something different. Relief. Disbelief. The overwhelming sensation of falling and finally hitting solid ground. Why? Nicole whispered. Why are you doing all this? Doc reached across the small table, taking Nicole's hand. Because someone has to. And because we can. That's all the reason we need. Tuesday, Nicole signed the lease on her new apartment. Judge accompanied her to make sure every clause was legal, every protection in place. Tiny and 4 other brothers helped move in the furniture the club had collected. Donations from members, a couch from Tank's garage, a kitchen table from Reaper's storage unit, beds purchased new with money from the emergency fund. By evening, the apartment looked like a home. Jaden's portable crib sat in Nicole's bedroom. Marcus's small room had a twin bed, a donated dresser, and a box of toys that Doc had quietly purchased. The kitchen had food in the cabinets, basic staples stocked by Angela, who knew exactly what a family recovering from malnutrition needed. That night, Nicole put her children to bed in a warm apartment with locks on the doors and heat that worked. She tucked Marcus in, kissed his forehead, watched him fall asleep clutching his stuffed dinosaur. She checked on Jaden, adjusting his blue blanket, Marcus Sr.'s blanket, around his small sleeping form. Then Nicole sat on her new couch in her new living room and cried until there were no tears left. But these were different tears. These were the tears of someone who'd been drowning and finally broke the surface, gasping air. Alive. Wednesday, Doc took Nicole and the children to Green Bay Medical Clinic. Dr. Sarah Patel, the pediatrician, examined both boys thoroughly. Jaden's weight was low, but not critically so. He'd lost ground during the 3 weeks in the car, but not enough to cause permanent damage. With proper nutrition, he'd recover fully. Marcus's respiratory infection was responding to antibiotics. His early frostbite had caused no lasting damage. Dr. Patel scheduled follow-up appointments for both children and gave Nicole referrals for a therapist. For you, doctor, Patel said gently. What you've been through, living in a car with 2 small children in winter, the trauma of the eviction, the fear, that doesn't just go away because you have housing now. You need support to process it. Nicole nodded. I will, I promise. That afternoon, Byte helped Nicole set up a new bank account at a different institution, one that hadn't frozen her funds during the dispute. He showed her how to set up automatic bill payments, how to track expenses, how to protect herself from future landlord fraud. Always get receipts, Byte explained, his tone patient and thorough. Always pay by check or electronic transfer, so there's a record. Never pay cash unless you get a signed, dated receipt immediately. And photograph everything. Lease agreements, move-in conditions, correspondence, everything. Nicole took notes, her hand moving quickly across the paper. I'll never let this happen again, she said firmly. No, Byte agreed. You won't, because now you know the system. And knowledge is protection. Thursday, Nicole started her new job at Walsh Electrical Contracting, Tiny's legitimate business that employed 17 people and brought in steady, honest income. Her desk was in the front office, answering phones, scheduling appointments, processing invoices. The work was familiar, similar to what she'd done as a dental hygienist's office administrator before she'd trained as a hygienist. Her co-workers were kind. They didn't ask invasive questions. They didn't treat her like a charity case. They just welcomed her, showed her the systems, brought her coffee, and by noon, she felt like she'd been there for months. At 3:00 p.m., Tiny knocked on her office door. "How's it going?" he asked. "Good," Nicole said honestly. "Really good. Thank you, Tiny, for everything. The job, the apartment, Tiny held up a hand. "You're thanking me for giving you what you already deserved. A safe place to live. A job where you're paid fairly. Basic human dignity. That's not charity, Nicole. That's just what should have always been there." He pulled an envelope from his pocket, set it on her desk. "This is from the club's emergency fund. It's $3,000. I know you got your bank money back, but you're going to have expenses. Childcare, clothes for the boys, things you lost in the eviction. This is to make sure you're not starting from zero." Nicole stared at the envelope. "I can't. You can. And you will. Because that's what family does." "I'm not family," Nicole whispered. Tiny smiled, that rare, genuine smile that transformed his intimidating face into something warm. "Yeah, you are. You became family the moment Hawk called me. That's how brotherhood works. It expands. And you're in it now, whether you realize it or not." Friday evening, the preliminary hearing for Raymond Tucker's criminal case took place at Brown County Courthouse. Judge Bryant accompanied Nicole, not as her attorney, since this was a criminal case with a public prosecutor, but as support. Tiny, Hawk, Doc, and Bite sat in the gallery behind her. Raymond Tucker sat at the defendant's table in an orange jumpsuit, his attorney beside him, looking nothing like the confident businessman who'd destroyed 23 families. He looked small, defeated, ordinary in the worst way. The prosecutor, Assistant District Attorney Marcus Reynolds, presented the evidence: 2 sets of books, witness testimonies from 9 former tenants, text messages demonstrating intent, financial records showing $87,000 in stolen deposits. The judge, not Judge Hartman, who'd been quietly removed from tenant cases pending investigation into his relationship with the landlord association, listened carefully. "Mr. Tucker," Judge Patricia Morrison said, her voice cold and precise. "The evidence presented suggests a systematic pattern of fraud spanning 3 years, targeting vulnerable single mothers and families with children. The court finds sufficient cause to proceed to trial. Bail remains at $100,000. Trial date is set for April 14th. Do you understand?" Tucker's attorney nodded. Tucker said nothing. As they left the courthouse, Nicole felt something shift inside her chest. Not closure. Healing doesn't work that way. But validation. The system that had failed her so spectacularly was finally working. "How do you feel?" Hawk asked as they walked to the parking lot. Nicole thought about it. "Like I can breathe," she said finally. "For the first time in months, I can breathe." 6 months later, on a warm Saturday in August, the Green Bay Hells Angels chapter held their annual family barbecue at Tiny's property. 5 acres of land with a pavilion, picnic tables, and space for kids to run. Nicole arrived with Jaden, now 14 months old, walking wobbly but determined, and Marcus, who'd turned 6 in April. Marcus ran immediately to the play area where other children were already running around, laughing, playing. He'd made friends with Tank's grandson, a boy his age named Jacob, and the two were inseparable at club events. Jaden toddled toward Doc, who scooped him up with practiced ease. "There's my favorite patient," Doc said, kissing his forehead. "Look how big you got." Nicole set down the potato salad she'd made, her contribution to the potluck, and looked around at the gathering. 73 people. Club members, their families, children ranging from toddlers to teenagers, music playing from speakers, the smell of burgers and hot dogs on the grill, laughter and conversation, and the kind of warm, easy chaos that comes from people who genuinely care about each other. Tiny approached, beer in hand, smile on his face. "Nicole, good to see you. How's work?" "Amazing," Nicole said honestly. "I got promoted last month, office manager now, $42,000 a year." "That's my girl," Tiny said proudly. "And the boys?" "Thriving. Marcus starts first grade in 3 weeks. He's so excited. Jaden's in daycare 3 days a week. He loves it. We're doing really well." She paused, looked at Tiny seriously. "I can never repay you. Any of you. What you did, you're not supposed to repay it," Tiny interrupted gently. "You're supposed to pay it forward. Someday you'll see someone who needs help, and you'll remember what it felt like to be desperate, and you'll help them. That's how it works." Nicole nodded, tears in her eyes. "I will. I promise." Across the pavilion, little Marcus was playing tag with 6 other children, his laughter bright and clear. Jaden was being passed around from person to person, each one cooing over him, making him giggle. Both boys were healthy, fed, safe, loved. Nicole pulled out her phone, snapped a photo of Marcus mid-run, his face split in a huge grin. She'd started a tradition 6 months ago, taking one photo every day of something good. A smile, a meal shared, a moment of safety. She had 183 photos now, a visual record of healing. Tonight she'd add this one to the collection. Her son running free, no longer afraid. In April, Raymond Tucker's trial lasted 3 days. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence. Financial records, witness testimonies from 11 former tenants. 2 more had come forward. The 2 sets of books, text messages, emails. Patricia Simmons's death had been ruled suspicious but inconclusive. Not enough evidence to charge murder, but enough to establish a pattern of predatory behavior. The jury deliberated for 1 hour and 47 minutes. Guilty on all 23 counts of fraud. Guilty on all 23 counts of theft by deception. Guilty on all 14 counts of filing false documents. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. 8 years in state prison. No eligibility for parole for 5 years. Restitution ordered to all victims, $87,400 to be divided among the 23 families, paid from the sale of Tucker's properties. Tucker's rental empire was dismantled. His properties were sold at auction. His truck was repossessed. His boat sold to cover legal fees. He'd built his wealth on the desperation of others, and in 18 months, it was all gone. Nicole received her restitution check in June. $4,375, every penny he'd stolen from her. She deposited it in her savings account. Then she donated $500 to St. Vincent's House, the shelter that had tried to help her. And she framed the check stub with a note. Paid in full. Justice served. 3 months is both forever and no time at all when you're rebuilding a life from nothing. For Nicole Harris, 3 months meant 97 days of waking up in a safe apartment instead of a freezing car. 14 therapy sessions teaching her that trauma doesn't define her. 1 promotion at work, recognition for her organizational skills. 42 meals shared with club members who'd become family. 263 photos documenting moments of joy. 0 nights wondering if her children would survive until morning. By September, Nicole had gained back the 13 pounds she'd lost during the 3 weeks of homelessness. Her face had color again. Her eyes had light. She smiled easily, laughed with her co-workers, played with her children without the constant shadow of fear. Little Marcus started 1st grade at Lincoln Elementary. On his first day, Nicole walked him to class, kissed his forehead, watched him run inside with his new backpack and his stuffed dinosaur tucked inside. She didn't cry until she got back to her car. These were the good tears. The tears of a mother who'd survived impossible circumstances and come out the other side with her children safe. That evening, Marcus came home chattering about his teacher, his new friend Emma, the book they'd read about dinosaurs. He showed Nicole his artwork, a crayon drawing of a motorcycle with the words, "Tiny's Bike," written in wobbly letters underneath. "Can we visit the clubhouse soon?" Marcus asked. "I miss Jacob and Tank." "This weekend," Nicole promised. "We'll go to the barbecue." Jaden, now walking confidently at 15 months, toddled over with his blue blanket clutched in one hand. Nicole scooped him up, buried her face in his hair, breathed in the scent of baby shampoo and safety. That night, after both boys were asleep, Nicole sat on her couch and opened her laptop. She'd been thinking about this for weeks, talking about it with her therapist, planning. She opened a blank document and began typing. "My name is Nicole Harris, and I want to tell you what happened when the system failed me, and what happened when people who refused to let me fall caught me instead." She wrote for 3 hours. The whole story. The eviction, the car, the freezing nights, the desperation that led her to steal formula, the security guard who chose compassion over policy, the 220 bikers who showed up not with violence, but with evidence and determination. She wrote about Raymond Tucker's arrest, the trial, the justice that felt both satisfying and insufficient because it couldn't erase what she'd been through. And she wrote about the after, the healing, the safety, the slow process of learning to trust again. When she finished, she sent the document to Judge Bryant with a simple message. "Can you help me publish this? Other people need to know they're not alone." Judge responded within an hour. "Absolutely. I know someone at the Green Bay Press-Gazette. This story needs to be told." Nicole's story ran in the Press-Gazette in October, accompanied by a photo of her with Tiny, Hawk, Judge, Duke, and Bite standing in front of the clubhouse. The headline read, "When the System Fails, How Hell's Angels Saved a Family and Exposed a Fraud Scheme." The response was immediate and overwhelming. 47 emails from other people who'd been illegally evicted, asking for help. 12 donations to the club's emergency fund, totaling $18,000. 6 news outlets requesting interviews. And most importantly, 3 calls to the Wisconsin State Legislature from constituents demanding stronger tenant protections and oversight of landlord practices. 2 months later, the Wisconsin Tenant Rights Enhancement Act was introduced. Legislation requiring landlords to provide electronic receipts for all payments, establishing a statewide database of eviction filings to identify patterns, and creating stronger penalties for fraudulent evictions. It was nicknamed Nicole's Law by the representatives who sponsored it. Nicole testified at the committee hearing, Tiny and Judge sitting behind her in support. "What happened to me shouldn't be possible," Nicole said, her voice steady and clear. "But it is possible. It happens every day. Single mothers, elderly people, immigrants, anyone without resources or knowledge of their rights. They're targeted by predators who know the system protects property owners over human beings." She looked at the assembled legislators. "I was lucky. A security guard chose compassion. A motorcycle club chose to help. But not everyone gets that lucky. And people shouldn't have to rely on luck to survive. They should be able to rely on the law." The committee voted unanimously to advance the bill. It passed both chambers in January and was signed into law in February. Exactly 1 year after Nicole had stood in that Walmart with stolen formula, accepting that she was about to lose everything. This story isn't really about bikers or landlords or even justice. It's about what happens when ordinary people refuse to look away. Marcus Hawk Johnson was working a $17 an hour security job. He didn't have wealth or power or influence. What he had was the willingness to see a desperate mother and think, "I can help," instead of, "Not my problem." The 220 Hells Angels who showed up weren't superheroes. They were electricians and nurses and teachers and mechanics, people with day jobs and families and bills to pay. They just believed that when someone needs help, you don't ask questions, you show up. Raymond Tucker destroyed 23 families because he could, because the system made it easy, because people looked the other way. But he was stopped because a handful of people decided enough was enough. There are Nicole Harrises everywhere. Right now, someone is living in their car with children, choosing between food and heat, stealing to survive while wondering if anyone notices, if anyone cares. There are Raymond Tuckers everywhere, predators who exploit the vulnerable, who know the law protects them, who count on people being too afraid or too poor or too exhausted to fight back. And there are potential Hawk Johnsons everywhere, people who see injustice and have to make a choice, ignore it or act. You don't need 200 motorcycles to change a story. You don't need a law degree or a patch on your vest or a dramatic rescue mission. You need to pay attention when a child hesitates before answering how they are. You need to ask uncomfortable questions when a coworker shows up in the same clothes 3 days in a row. You need to believe someone when they tell you they're in danger, even if it's inconvenient, even if it's messy, even if helping them costs you something. You need to care enough to act. Nicole Harris didn't just survive because of the Hells Angels. She survived because one person, one minimum wage security guard working the closing shift at Walmart, looked at a desperate mother and saw a human being instead of a liability. That's where this story really begins and ends, with the choice to see people, with the courage to help, with the refusal to accept that suffering is inevitable, just because it's common. Raymond Tucker is in prison. Nicole has a safe home, a good job, healthy children. The system has been improved, though not perfected. But the most important part isn't the ending. It's the moment in the middle. The moment when someone had to decide, do I call the police or do I call for help? Hawk chose help, and everything else followed from that one choice. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that courage doesn't always roar and heroes don't always wear capes, then I need you to do something. Subscribe to this channel and share this story. Tell people that the scariest-looking person in a room might be exactly who you need. Tell people that when the system fails, sometimes brotherhood succeeds. Comment below. Who was your protector when you needed one? Or what do you wish someone had done when you were struggling? Because we all have a story. We've all been vulnerable. We've all needed help. And if you haven't yet, if you're reading this from a place of stability and safety, then you're the one who gets to be Hawk Johnson for someone else. Pay attention, ask questions, help when you can. That's all it takes to change a story. One person caring enough to act. Today, little Marcus is 7 years old. He rides his bike to school, plays soccer on weekends, wants to be an electrician like Uncle Tiny when he grows up. Jaden is 2, talking in full sentences, obsessed with trucks and motorcycles and the color blue. Nicole is office manager at Walsh Electrical, saving money for a house, volunteering at St. Vincent's Shelter twice a month, helping other families navigate the system that once destroyed her. And every night before bed, she tucks both boys in, adjusts Jaden's worn blue blanket, the one Marcus Sr. gave him, the one that kept him warm through the worst nights, and whispers the same words. You're safe. You're loved. And you're never alone. Because that's what someone once told her when she'd lost everything, and now she gets to pass it forward.